Hey, book lovers. My name is Em, and I want to talk about books. And cats. Hey, book lovers, welcome back. So, my goal of going all of April without buying books did not work out. Surprise, surprise. There are just too many interesting books out there, and I always worry that I'm going to forget about them if I don't have them in my possession. Plus, what would I do if I suddenly felt inspired to read a certain book, but I didn't have it yet? This is my book logic. Anyway, I guess there are worse things that I could be spending money on than books. They are at least beneficial. So today I'm not talking about one book, but three. And they are all really good horror stories. Honestly, some of the best that I've read in a while, and I love a good horror story. And they're all written by the same author. So I have been following this author on Instagram for quite a while. Her name is Mona Kabbani. But I hadn't actually read any of her work. And then I happened to just see one of her Instagram promos, and the story really caught my attention. And then when I was looking at that one, I checked out the other ones and ended up getting all three. I had originally planned to just cover one of the books right now and then save the other ones for a later episode. But I loved that first one so much that I just kept reading until I was done with all three. The other two are novellas, so they're a little bit shorter, but they're all just so good. And like I said, I devoured all three in no time. It was like 2 days. So I want to start with the one that initially caught my eye, and that is Vanilla by Mona Kabbani, as I said before. A little bit about the author first. Her bio on Amazon says, Mona Kabbani is a horror fan, writer, and reviewer obsessed with psychology and the human condition. She emulates the conflict of good versus bad and all of the in-between in her work while providing an entertainingly horrifying experience. She is a Lebanese immigrant living the American dream in New York City, where much of her writing is inspired. You can follow her on Instagram at Morality in Horror. And you can also check out her website, which is moralityinhorror.com. So I would say definitely follow Mona Kabbani on Amazon, Instagram, anywhere. Her writing is incredible. I loved it. So the first book, Vanilla, was a really great read. Just a solid, creepy horror story, you know? It's mostly told from the point of view of Vanilla, who is a little girl that is growing up in a barren cement room, presumably in a basement. She has a bed, a dirty white dress, and her toys, which consist of a stuffed dog, a stethoscope, and a syringe. Fun stuff. She keeps trying to bring the stuffed dog to life with the syringe, but it never ends up working. Spoiler alert. So every so often, she is visited by her daddy, a mysterious man described mostly as a shadow with silver hair and blue flame eyes. And right from the start, you know that something is just off with him, and not just because he's keeping his daughter in a cement room with no access to sunlight or really anything. We do eventually get some of his point of view, too. It's just enough to kind of fill in some of the blanks in Vanilla's story. And his stuff kind of increases as she gets older because things become more complicated. This story takes a very interesting look at the idea of good and bad and how it can really vary depending on perspective, basically. And it also takes a rather different view from what we would usually accept as normal, but then it also kind of flips again. That probably makes no sense, but I'm trying to discuss this without ruining the story, and it's really difficult. Vanilla is dark and incredibly well written. The character of Vanilla is just fascinating, and her story really takes a sharp twist as she grows up, and it is just fantastic. It is so nice to read a good horror story again. You know, they just hit different than a thriller. You know what I mean? Anyway, I definitely recommend Vanilla by Mona Kabbani. Now let's talk about book 2. This one's called For You. And this one was completely different from Vanilla, but again, just another great story. I really, really enjoyed her writing. This one begins on a cart that is moving through the country to the Black Lands where fires burn day and night, and the unlucky must go out and hunt these vicious monsters that are called white sights. They were once people, but they've been taken by this kind of madness and now must be hunted because they'll kill people. And honestly, the white sights end up killing a lot more of the hunters than the hunters do of them. So you're kind of doomed if you go there. Everyone in this cart has been sent there as a form of punishment of some kind. But they are all surprised by the presence of the merchant's daughter, Muharib. She's our protagonist. So the merchant is powerful and wealthy, and the idea that his child could not be saved from having to do this hunt is shocking. But Muharib does not speak to them. She just accepts her fate and she waits. Now they are brought to this massive building and they join with the horde of people that are already waiting for the hunt. Some of them have survived multiple nights of hunting already, and some of them are brand new. Muharib and the others from the cart, who just kind of start following her naturally as their leader, they meet a boy named Nimrod who assists them during their first hunt. He's been there for a few nights. He kind of knows what's going on. So once night falls and the hunt begins, that's when things get kind of wild. And that's when the story kind of veers off unexpectedly. Like it just takes a sharp 90-degree turn. And I loved this one. The atmosphere of the country was just so vivid. It gave me like Dark Tower vibes. I would definitely recommend For You. It will just bend your mind. This one was just so surprisingly different from Vanilla, and yet I still got the author's distinct voice in both of them. And it carries on to the last one that I'm discussing today, which is called The Bell Chime. Now this one, I was so glad that I read this one last because it was my favorite by far. I loved the other two, like loved them. But this one is just exactly what I want from a horror story. I love the way it's written. I love the characters. It's just fantastic. I am going to do my best to tell you about this without ruining anything, but with maybe giving you some idea of what's going on. So this story is told in sections with intermissions in between, which I instantly loved as a story structure. I love plays. I was a theater major. And this had kind of a play setup almost. And it starts with the first section, which is called The Bell Chime. So this was apparently the first iteration of this story, just this section. But the author continued the story later on. And I am so glad that she did. The original story is taken from a nightmare that she had, and it makes for a very creepy setting. So the nightmare involves waking up in an opaque plastic body bag and being shocked painfully over and over. Every time that they hear the bell chime, when the man administering the shocks asks them if they can hear it, if they reply yes, that equals another painful shock. When our unnamed female protagonist wakes up from her nightmare, she sees her concerned boyfriend Dexter sitting next to her, and she remembers that she is safe. But as he begins making them breakfast, she leaves to go grab some bacon, and she finds a missing persons poster taped to the door of her building. It has her face on it, and it is a picture that she has never seen and is certain she has never taken. And things just kind of begin to unravel from there. Section 2, after an intermission, is titled Lauren. Lauren is having some problems with hallucinations, but she is determined to attend a party at her friend Sam's apartment, even if it does involve riding up a creepy elevator with a strange man who never turns around to look at her and only speaks to her when the power goes out. That section is just wild. That was a good one. The next one, after another intermission, is called Before the Ring. In this section, our unnamed female protagonist is struggling with life. She sits for too long at a cafe every day, she pops pills, and when she returns home, her mother is concerned because she has a stack of papers in her purse. She's looking for someone, a young man named Dylan Werner, a boy who she loved and who has vanished. She's postering the town over and over in hopes of finding him, but it's been a long time and she refuses to let it go, and she is being destroyed by the grief. So the next section is called Dylan Werner, and we get a brief glimpse of who this boy was and just how he fits into this whole story, because all these sections kind of chunk together very satisfyingly, kind of like putting Legos together. So we find out a little bit about Dylan, and not really what happened to him, but just what led up to him disappearing. And then it is back to another section called Before the Ring. But this time we have a little more information, and like I said, the story is beginning to unfold at this point. Everything's kind of coming together. And then we have the final section, which is called The First Ring. And this is when everything kind of gels together and the story becomes whole. And I have to say that this is just such a satisfying story structure. I love the way that this was kind of doled out to the reader in small chunks, and those chunks all kind of fit together eventually. And the story is just so captivating and so well written. It is just fabulous. I highly recommend The Bell Chime by Mona Kabbani, and For You, and Vanilla. I love her writing. There is just nothing like a good horror story. I know I keep saying it. I've said it 3 times for all 3 of these books because all 3 of these just really satisfy that itch. They are just fantastic. Definitely check out Mona Kabbani. Okay, so now it is time for a quick break, and then I have an excellent quote for you, as well as the newest chapter of my weekly writing project. Be right back. Welcome back, book lovers. We're getting straight into the quote of the week this time, and this one is actually, it's kind of a long quote. It is the end of The Bell Chime. And don't worry, this does not give anything away or ruin anything. I just loved it. What a way to end a story. So I'm going to share it with you. The quote is, "She is happy, but that doesn't mean that it was the right choice. It also doesn't mean that it was the wrong one. And that is the beauty of the human condition. It isn't so cut and dried. So this is where I'll leave you, dear reader, with a question that I hope doesn't keep you up too late at night. What would you abandon for happiness?" And honestly, that is a very good question. Something to think about. Such a good writer. Anyway, now it is time for another chapter of my weekly writing project. We are up to chapter 24, which is kind of wild. The book is currently called Secret Keeper. It is book 2 in my Verdant Valley series. And like I said, this week is chapter 24. Enjoy. It was close to midnight on a moonless night, and the sound of the rushing river was the only thing she could hear. Her own cautious steps occasionally stirred the loose stones along the riverbank, and the sound seemed unbelievably loud, though very few would have been able to hear it over the river's steady roar. A new sound stopped her in her tracks. It was very close. Someone was following her. She wanted to lash out in frustration, but she tried to continue on as before. She had already made the grave error of not paying attention behind her. She could at least not betray now that she knew she was being followed. And now there was another sound, the scattering of loose stones and the sound of water dripping. Someone was ahead of her, too. She closed her eyes, though it made no difference on this impenetrable night. Her body went perfectly still, and behind her eyelids, sparks of colorful lights danced. She watched intently as the lights swirled and formed images before dispersing and swirling into something else. When the dance was over, she opened her eyes. It had taken mere moments, though time moved differently behind her eyelids, and she had already had plenty of time to see it all. 2 women, one following not far behind and currently hiding behind a slender tree trunk where the forest met the riverbank. The other seemed to have emerged from the river, but she didn't recognize her. There was a cloud around her, blocking the view. She couldn't be sure exactly who stood dripping in the darkness. She swallowed and tried to calm her thundering heart. She didn't want her voice to shake when she spoke. "Stop where you are," she called out in a clear, sharp voice. "Both of you." "Both," whispered the voice behind her. The other merely sucked in their breath, but she made no other sound. She waited with growing agitation. It had been a long journey already, and she was bone tired. The closer she'd gotten to the valley, the more treacherous her journey had become. Now she'd finally reached her destination and had hoped for rest and hospitality, not more problems. She heard the sudden retreat of the woman behind her. That was fine. One less mysterious person to deal with, and that one had seemed much more timid and inexperienced. The quiet one near the river posed a much greater problem. "Tell me who you are," she commanded. The quiet one laughed. The noise sounded strange in the dark, muted by the roar of the river. "You must not know where you are," said a cool, low voice. "I give the commands around here, and I am not very welcoming to strangers." Their quick, slippery steps approached rapidly, and she stuck out a hand to protect her face, just as a heavy stick came whistling through the air. She blocked it just in time. It hit her arm hard, and she ducked and then sidestepped. She heard the second attempt make contact with the rocky shore, and she darted further out of reach. "Nim?" she finally asked softly. She heard the other woman gasp. "No. But I am her friend. Who are you?" Could she trust this mysterious person in the dark? They had come from the water and seemed to know Nim, but were there any in the river realm who would not? She decided to risk it. "I am also a friend. From before." She didn't need to say anything more. "Before," the other woman whispered. She made a strange, sharp sound and smacked the ground with her stick. The entire riverbank was suddenly bathed in firelight, and she beheld a beautiful river dweller, holding a stick which was now on fire. "Your name?" the woman said after they had contemplated each other for a moment. She dropped her gaze to the ground. Shame swelled inside her like a wave preparing to break and smash on the shore. "Allie," she said finally. The other woman looked stricken. "Allie," she repeated softly. "Nim said you." She fell silent and looked away, but Allie saw the tears in her eyes. "Where is Nim? Has something happened to her?" The woman shook her head. "I don't know. She just vanished one day. We were supposed to be meeting about a restoration project, but she just never showed up. I've looked everywhere. I don't know where she went, but in my heart I feel she has left the river realm. Possibly the valley as well." Allie pressed her lips together. She was too late. Her sight had been a bit off lately, and the message must have been delayed. She had seen Nim's departure, and she had seen the cloud of danger surrounding her choice. The rest of the details were unclear, and Allie had traveled as quickly as she could. She had ignored situations that she probably should have intervened on because she had been so desperate to keep her friends safe. Regret was seeping through her irritation, but she squashed it quickly. There would be time later on for pondering her choices. "What is your name?" she asked finally. "Sephi," she replied with only a momentary hesitation. "I've known Nim for a very long time." "You helped her rebuild the realm," Allie said with a smile. "Nim and I kept in touch for a long time even after I left. She told me all about you." A look of pleased satisfaction crossed Sephi's face. "She did. That's so sweet." Her face fell as she recalled her missing friend, and she once again turned her face toward the river to hide her worry. "I don't know what to do," she said finally. "How do I even begin looking for her? I've never been beyond the riverbanks. I wouldn't know where to start." Sephi's voice broke a little at the end, and Allie gave her a kind smile. "Let me try and find her. Give me 3 days. I will cover as much area as I can. I have a few places where I can start looking. You keep searching every nook and cranny of the river realm that you can think of, and keep peace in the realm for when she returns." Sephi nodded, looking relieved that Allie had been so willing to take charge, and that she wouldn't have to leave the water. "Go on. I know it's hard for you to be out of the water. I must sleep a little, but I will set out before sunrise." Sephi nodded and turned back toward the water, but Allie suddenly stepped forward and grabbed the girl's cool, slippery arm. "Thank you for guarding the river realm while Nim is away. You are a courageous and devoted friend." Sephi smiled a little and looked embarrassed. Allie gave her arm a gentle squeeze before releasing her. She smiled and waved as Sephi dove into the racing current. She took the fire with her, and Allie was once again plunged into complete darkness. She moved away from the water's edge and felt around until she found a large, smooth boulder and sat down. "Okay," she said softly. "Come on out." There was the slightest rustle in the nearby trees. After a long moment of silence, there was a soft buzzing of wings, and a gentle breeze indicated when the other woman landed beside her. "You can see in the dark?" the mystery woman asked. "In a way," Allie said gruffly. "Who are you?" She heard the woman step back, and she cursed herself for being too rough. She was bone-tired from weeks of traveling mostly on foot, and she was desperate for a few moments of sleep. Allie had been living in almost complete isolation for many, many years, and she had recently been exposed to far too many people and their perplexing choices. She yearned to go home to solitude. She was tired of people. "Well," she asked, trying to soften her tone a little, "I'd like to know who you are, and why you were following me." Another hesitation. Allie heard the buzzing of the woman's wings again, picking up speed. "You don't know me," she said finally. Allie sighed. "I'm too tired for games. Your name." She was done trying to be patient. She was losing precious time, precious moments of sleep. Sometimes it was more productive to be direct. "I'm not going to wait much longer." She turned her voice into a low growl. "I have very little patience in me, and even less tonight. Even less for a stranger who creeps around in the dark and is too cowardly to say their name." Nothing. Not even the buzzing. Just the steady rush of the river. Allie shook her head, though it was far too dark to be seen. She removed a stone from her pocket and struck it hard against the rock under her. It burst into a flash of sparks, which hung in the air overhead and illuminated the nearby area. The woman was right. Allie didn't know her. There was something nagging her mind, but she pushed it aside and offered the woman a friendly smile. She immediately grew more at ease. Allie had that talent. She could make anyone around her feel comfortable and safe. It had proven useful before, but she tried not to think about that handful of times. Some things were best left in the shadows. "Come on now," she said soothingly. "Tell me your name. You're right, I don't recognize you. So can you tell me why you're following me?" The woman nodded slowly. In the dim light, she could see the dazed, glassy look in the woman's eyes. She was entirely unguarded. She hadn't been at all aware of what Allie was doing, not even a moment of suspicion. She wanted to tell Allie everything, but something was holding her back. "My name is Nicaros. Nika, usually. I have been waiting and watching the riverbank ever since I saw the message. I knew someone would answer Nim's call. Someone had to get through." Nika. Allie felt a little ill. She knew what the nagging feeling was, and she wished she'd left the woman alone. "Yeah." She was leaning on the boulder now, as if she couldn't hold up her own weight. Her slim, shimmery wings drooped behind her, motionless. "Shoot," Allie said. She moved swiftly and caught Nika as her legs went out from under her, and she fell. Allie cradled the young woman's head mere inches from the rocks. She'd gone a little too heavy with her mind tricks. The younger, purer souls were more susceptible to her powers. Allie refused to call her strange talents magic. She had seen true magic. She had stood so close to it that she bore the fallout of its curse. For nothing. For love, at the time. What a blissfully naive girl she'd been back then. so certain that what she was doing was right, so certain that the ones she followed had the very best intentions. She wasn't sure anyone actually ever had good intentions. Even Allie rarely did, and she had once been so proud of her kindness and altruism. It was all for nothing. Nika was incredibly light, and Allie was able to lift and carry her to the grassy bank. The lights above followed her, keeping her centered in the circle of dim, dancing light. Allie sat beside the unconscious woman and studied her pale, perfect face. Even in her solitude, some messages would reach her. Lizalt's new bride had come through, but the image had been hazy. Still, there had been no question that she was beautiful and young. Seeing her now, Allie admired her perfect beauty. She was flawless. It made her stomach hurt, but Allie could be realistic. She was never going to be what he wanted, and he had tried to tell her. She cringed when she thought about how desperately she had clung on, how she had begged him to love her. Nika groaned, and her eyes fluttered open. It took a moment for her to adjust to the dim light. Then she focused on Allie, and her pale face grew somehow even more pale. "What did you do to me?" she asked in a trembling voice. Her eyes were large and round with terror. Allie rolled her eyes. "You're fine. Get up. Tell me what you want from me." Nika struggled up onto her elbows and stared dazedly around her. Finally, she brought her focus back to Allie. "I knew it would be you. Kevo tried, of course, but Lizalt had him intercepted." "What?" Allie knew she shouldn't be surprised. Lizalt had shown over and over the shifting nature of his character. It was surprising, however, that he would stoop low enough to capture his old best friend. "I wasn't sure how you would receive me, but I knew you would help me if you knew. I want to free him. There's not much time. Lizalt plans to turn him over to Francie, and whatever she has planned—" "Wait," Allie stopped her. "Francie? No one's heard from her in decades. I heard she was dead." Nika raised an eyebrow. "And you believed it?" "No. You know as well as anyone about the curse. Where did you think she'd gone?" Allie knew Nika was right. She had wanted to believe the unbelievable. If Francie could die, then there must be a way that she could, too. She also feared what Francie was up to, and she chose the comfort of ignoring it. And for a very long time, it worked. Now she could see the error in her choices. She should have gone looking for Francie. She should have known she'd be holed up somewhere, plotting and scheming. She had hoped Rhea and Martina would handle it. They were on a quest for redemption by that time. But they also just seemed to let it go. Everyone was more comfortable just forgetting about her. Nika was watching her. She feared Allie, but she was growing bolder. Finally, Allie sighed and spoke. "I chose ignorance for my own comfort," she admitted. "I should have searched for her when she first disappeared, but no one raised an alarm. We just all lost contact with her." "Not all of you," Nika replied softly. "Lizalt found her. Quite quickly, actually. She must have been somewhere nearby because he was only gone for a few days. When he returned, he acted differently. He told me bits and pieces, nothing much, but I know she's planning something big and is trying to collect the children of death. This seems suspicious to me. Francie was never big on family, so why the sudden interest? And then I was thinking about their mothers." Her voice trailed off. Even now there was a certain horror that the memory of those women produced. It was in the very soul of the valley, or it had been until the peace tree went into overdrive and began draining the world of magic. Francie disappeared right around the time the peace tree began. Allie wasn't sure how to finish the question, but Nika was already nodding. "Yes," she said eagerly. "I thought that too. Do you think they're somehow connected?" Knowing Francie, yes. Allie pulled at a blade of grass on the riverbank. "What else do you know?" she asked finally. Nika hesitated. "Lizalt said Francie's actually the good guy in this, but I couldn't believe it. He wouldn't explain anything to me. He just kept saying that there were worse things out in the world than the children of death." She wrinkled her nose. "I hate calling them that. It's so silly. They're also ancient." That sparked something in Allie's memory. The book. Lottie had given it to her to place in the secret apartment for Martina to discover. She had sworn to leave it unopened. Allie convinced Lottie that she had no interest in the secrets of the magical world and its powers. That was a lie. She felt bad about lying to the trusting old woman, but she was itching to get her hands on that book. She had come across it by accident one day, and Lottie gave her a brief explanation of what it was, saying that Allie should never, ever touch it or move it from where it lay. Of course, her interest was immediately piqued, and when it became clear that Lottie could not wait for Martina any longer, she finally entrusted the book, and more of the story, to Allie. She was supposed to place the book and redo the protection spells hiding the apartment. She was supposed to forget about it and never return. But she did go back. Every time she was careful not to be followed, and she redid the protection spells when she left. She read the entire book. Some parts more than once. She didn't understand all of it, but what she could, she committed to memory. She didn't even know why she did it, but it had seemed important at the time. Allie had only skimmed the early pages of the book. The part about the ancients seemed incredibly dull and unimportant. The rise of the dark-hearted ones had been far more captivating. Now she tried to remember anything that she could about the beginning times. The ancients dealt in chaos and destruction. They wiped out all of humanity and started fresh more than once, before a masterful sorceress managed to trap them between the worlds, in the darkness between life and death. Allie wasn't entirely sure what that meant, but it occurred to her that maybe Francie had seen this coming and was working on a way to prevent their return. Maybe she really was the lesser of the evils this time. Allie? Nika waved a hand in Allie's face, but it was hearing the young woman speak her name that shocked her back into reality. I need to talk to Lizault, she said suddenly. Nika got to her feet. No, she said firmly. This was a mistake. I should have known. Please don't. Don't tell him I was here. I know you still care for him, but please believe me. Kevo is in real danger. You might be as well. I don't trust Francie, and I don't trust my husband. Allie watched the emotion on Nika's face as she spoke. She was afraid. She was trying to do what she thought was right. Allie took a breath and patted the ground beside her. Okay. Sit. Tell me everything. Why is Kevo in danger? He's keeping him in a room in the inner castle. It's a fancy prison. Nice enough room, but no windows and constant monitoring by armed security guards. A guard stands in front of each door every night. I don't know how we'll get him out. It seems impossible. She sat down dejectedly on the grass. Allie took her hand, trying to soothe her but not overwhelm her this time. I can handle that part. So Lizault is going to give Kevo to Francie. What makes you think he's in danger with her? They have no history that I know of. I think her rage includes all of you, blood-related or not, and I think it means you're in danger. That's all I know. Is Lizault in danger? Nika shook her head sadly. He believes he is safe. Francie has promised him, but I feel danger stalking him. Same as you all. I don't have many abilities, but I do get these feelings at times, and they're never wrong. She started to cry. Allie put an arm around her shoulders and tried to take some of her pain. There was a surprising amount. As Nika's tears slowed, Allie rubbed her back. She tried to come up with a plan. She hoped she would be able to save both Kevo and Lizault. Two of her oldest friends at one time, they were strangers now. And Allie wondered how much she was willing to give for them. Nika was getting sleepy, and she curled up on the bank. Allie watched her sleep for a while, weighing her options and considering what would happen if she chose to just walk away. Before she drifted off, she had accepted her fate. She had come here for a reason. She left the comfort of her solitude for a purpose. There was no backing out now. She was tied to the children of death for her aggravatingly long life, and she would give everything she had. And that's it for Chapter 24, book lovers. I hope you have enjoyed this 3-book episode. If you love horror, definitely check out Mona Kabbani, or you can also check out some of my books over at frapmedia.com. And while you're there, see what else we might be able to help you with. We do all kinds of video and sound editing. and we would love to help you make your dream project a reality. So check out frapmedia.com. And thanks so much for listening, book lovers. I am so very grateful for all of you. I hope you have a beautiful week. Take care of yourselves. And until next time, keep reading.
A Frap Media production.